Okay, we are reading chapter 7 called The Animal Master in Joseph Campbell's Primitive Mythology. We're in section 2 called Paleolithic Mythology. The picture in the huge Paleolithic temple cave known as Trois Frères in southern France of the buffalo dancer wearing precisely the ceremonial garb established in this legend and functioning apparently in the way of the brave shaman whose power it was to lure the animals to their fall, gives a clue, or more than a clue, I should say, to the very strong suggestion to the antiquity of the legend just told, or at least of its theme. Furthermore, in the neighboring cave, known as Tuque d'Audubert, there is a chamber in which two bison are represented in bas-relief on a raised prominence, around which the footsteps of a dancer have been found. The bison represent a cow being mounted by a bull, and the dance was performed not on the full soles of the feet, but on the heels in imitation of the hoofs of a beast. We have already said that Persephone and Demeter in their animal aspects were to be seen as pigs, and that Persephone as the bride of the monster serpent was a serpent. Here, comparably, as the bull's wife, the maiden was surely a buffalo cow, so that this may well be an early representation of that same divine connubium by which the buffalo dance was given to mankind. We are reminded also of the famous Paleolithic figure of a naked female known as the Venus of La Salle, which was carved in bas-relief on the wall of a rock shelter in southern France as the central figure of what was apparently a hunting shrine. So, first, here's the picture of the buffalo dancer in the cave in France. And then here's a picture of the Venus of La Salle. She has the great hips and breasts typical of the female figures of the early Stone Age art, and is holding in her right hand a bison's horn, lifted to the level of her shoulder. The left is placed upon her protruding belly, and sufficient traces of ochre remained when she was found to show that she had once been painted red. A number of other figures lay about on broken bits of rock within the shelter, two females holding in their right hands objects that have not been identified, a fourth in a curious attitude with the head and shoulders of another person upside down beneath her, in such a position as to have suggested to Dr. G. Lalande, its discoverer, a birth scene. A lithe male figure, head and arms gone, but in an attitude suggesting the throwing of a javelin, and finally the fragments of a hyena and a horse, besides a number of slabs and blocks incised with female genital symbols. The Abbé Breuil, who is the world's chief authority on the art of the French caves, assigns these manifestations of the mythology of the hunt to an extremely early period, namely Aurignacian and Perigordian, which according to the datings now generally recognized for this art would be circa 30,000 BC. We do not know the significance of the bison's horn in the woman's hand, but it surely was a bison's horn, and surely too the sanctuary served the covenant of man and beast in connection with the hunting rites. Precisely such a relationship as that established by the episode of our story. So that while I am not suggesting that these findings in southern France from circa 30,000 BC are the illustration of a legend collected circa 1870 AD on the buffalo plains of the Wild West, it is worth remarking that a constellation of shared motifs has begun definitely to emerge. On the walls of many of the Paleolithic caves, furthermore, the silhouetted handprints of participants in the rites have been discovered, and many of these show the same loss of finger joints that we have already remarked among the Indians of the plains. Old woman's grandson ran the words of a Crow Indian's prayer to the morning star. I give you this joint of my finger. Give me something good in exchange. I am poor. Give me a good horse. I want to strike one of the enemy, and I want to marry a good-natured woman. I want a tent of my own to live in. During the period of my visits to the Crow, 1907 to 1916, wrote Professor Lowy, to whom we owe the recording of this pitiful prayer, I saw few old men with left hands intact. These are the maimed hands, then, of the honest hunters, not the shamans. For the shamans' bodies are indestructible, and their great offerings are of the spirit, not the flesh. We are on the trail of the popular rites and myths of the earliest periods of human society of which we have record, myths and rites of an age far greater, apparently, than that of the sacrifice of the maiden, and no less great, surely, in their reach across the barriers of space. We have already remarked the vast span of the shamanistic tradition from pole to pole of the Americas, from Terra del Fuego to the Yenisei, and from Australia to Hudson Bay. We must now begin to follow the forms of the general exoteric hunting rites of the Paleolithic sanctuaries, down into the dimmest, darkest reaches of the well of the past. The clues become fewer and more widely spaced as we proceed, and yet, throughout, we may readily recognize those that remain as suggesting at least the possibility, or even probability, of such rites as those of the buffalo dance, on back to the very beginnings of the race. Before commencing the voyage, however, let us pause to examine the clues that our Blackfoot legend of the buffalo dance affords to the mythological atmosphere in which the Paleolithic hunt was carried out. We have 7 clues of particular importance. 1. As in the Ojibwe legend of the origin of maize, so here the action is not placed in the mythological age, but in a world like the present. For let us not be deceived by the speech and magic of the birds and beasts. Such speech and magic are still possible to shamans, and all the chief characters in this legend are endowed with shaman power. The myths and rites of the Australians, to which we were introduced in Part 1, Chapter 2, Section 5, refer to a mythological time fundamentally different from our own, when the ancestors shaped the world. Such myths occur also in America. It is probable, however, that they represent a stage in the development of mythology later than do these personal adventure stories of men and women, animals and birds, endowed with shamanistic power. For where shamanism is involved, the mythological age and realm are here and now. The man or woman, animal, tree, or rock possessing shamanistic magic has immediate access to that background of dreamlike reality, which for most others is crusted over. Myths and rites, referring to the mythological age, when the great mythological event took place that brought both death and reproduction into play, and fixed the destiny of life in time through a chain reaction of significantly interlocked transformations, belong rather to the world system of the planters than to the shamanistically dominated hunting sphere. Whenever such myths are found in a hunting society, acculturation from some horticultural or agricultural center can be supposed. In the case of the Australians, the influence came from neighboring Melanesia. Likewise, among the North American tribes, there were massive influences both from the high civilizations of Middle America and from Neolithic and post-Neolithic China, after circa 2500 BC, whose influences can be traced not only south of the Yellow River into Indonesia, and from there westward to Madagascar and eastward to Brazil, but also north of the river Amur into the very zones of northeastern Siberia from which the later North American migrations sprang. We are dealing, therefore, in these American myths with an extremely complex and not purely Paleolithic inheritance. Yet many clues, as we have just observed, point to at least one important strain running back even to the period of the Aurignacian caves. So we'll stop there for now, and next time we'll pick up again in Chapter 7. Thank you.